Hello everyone, and thank you for coming back to my channel. My name is Lane, and today we're actually going to be discussing one of the most influential, yet forgotten, characters in all of Pokemon. That of course being Mr. Fuji of Lavender Town. Now in this video we're going to do a character analysis by looking at what he does in the games, his appearances in the games, and then we're going to be looking at any time his name is mentioned throughout the entire series. And through doing this video, he's actually become one of my favorite characters just because of all that he has done for the world of Pokemon. So with that, go ahead, get a snack or drink, and like, subscribe, comment, all the fun stuff. And with that, let's get started. So Mr. Fuji is a character who appears in Generation 1 and Generation 2, as well as their remakes, who is an old man who lives in Lavender Town. The first time that we meet Mr. Fuji in the games will be when the player arrives in Lavender Town after the Pokemon Tower was taken over by Team Rocket. He had heard about the disturbance of what they were doing and found a displaced Cubone. After finding out that they unalived the Cubone's mother Marowak, he marched up to the tower in an attempt to calm its spirit. Once the tower has been cleared of Team Rocket and the Marowak spirit has been calmed, either by battling it in Generation 1 and 3 or by reuniting it with its Cubone in Generation 7, Mr. Fuji will escort you back to his home where he will provide the player with the Poké Flute. Now he cares for a Nidorino, Psyduck, and the Orphan Cubone for the rest of the game, which if you're playing in Generation 7, the Cubone's actually adopted by Trace and is a part of his team for the remainder of the game. Now, in the Johto games, we can find Mr. Fuji again in Lavender Town, with the Pokemon Tower having been converted to a radio tower in these games. He will be found at the House of Memories, paying respects to the deceased Pokemon here. In this house, there's actually hidden chambers that only Mr. Fuji has access to. He now has a Pidgey in his care versus the Psyduck and Nidorino. Now, throughout all of the games, Mr. Fuji is described as a kind and caring old man who cares for orphaned or forgotten Pokemon. When interviewed by the Pokemon Journal later on in the games, he actually turns them away because he's a very shy and reserved person, and he does not put up for any mistreatment or abuse towards Pokemon and takes a very firm stance in that, which we will find out later what may have caused that for him. Alright, so the next part of this video is actually going to be drawing lines and connections and making some assumptions, but that's what all good theories are. None of these things have been fully confirmed in the games. They've been mentioned, but never straight up confirmed for fact. But that's the fun part of it. So, throughout the games, Mr. Fuji is heavily hinted to be Dr. Fuji, the person responsible for creating Mewtwo. Now, keep in mind, for my evidence for this, I'm going to be staying away from the anime and from the manga, and I'm going to be staying away from side series games like Pokemon Masters, so I'm not looking at any of that, just main series evidence. In the original games, we have absolutely no indication from any in-game perspective that this is the case. Mewtwo was just created by some Team Rocket scientists and used for their purposes. However, in Fire Red and Leaf Green, we are introduced to an item called the Fame Checker, which provides us with more information on several different characters like gym leaders, Elite Four members, Professor Oak, his granddaughter Daisy, Bill, and Mr. Fuji. Now there are a couple of quotes here from the Fame Checker that I did want to address just because it does definitely add evidence to this theory. The first one comes from a man in Lavender Town, where he states, "There's a rumor. I hear that Mr. Fuji's not originally from these parts either." Okay, so he's not from Lavender Town, but that's normal, people move. Several different protagonists move at the beginning of the games, like Brandon or the Celine or Elio, I forgot May, Brandon or May. The next one to look at is surprisingly in the Cinnabar Island gym. It reads, "Family and friends? It's a photo of Blaine and Mr. Fuji. They're standing shoulder to shoulder with big grins." Now this is interesting because in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, Blaine makes a comment that his friend once owned the Pokemon Mansion, and based off of evidence from in-game, which includes Mewtwo's reaction to the test tubes in the basement and the journal entries from all of the games, we know that Mewtwo was created there. And if Mr. Fuji owns the Pokemon Mansion, there's a lot of evidence suggesting that he is the one who created Mewtwo. In the reception area of the Cinnabar Lab, there's actually a portrait of Dr. Fuji. The player is surprised upon reading that name, indicating some form or some sense of familiarity between the two of them. He was the head scientist at Cinnabar Lab, which is known for restoring fossil Pokemon or restoring bits of Pokemon that are left over after so long, which could be how he's restoring Mew. So the theory is that while his day job was at the Cinnabar lab, he would take his work home with him and work on restoring Mewtwo, or cloning Mew into Mewtwo. Now the last big piece of evidence that we have for this is going to be coming from Pokemon Emerald with the Old Sea Map event on Faraway Island. When the player arrives, they find a message. It reads, "The writing is faded as it was written a long time ago. Burr, 6th day if any human sets foot here again, et it be a kind-hearted if I hope I depart." And the Japanese is signed with this kanji. It's this. And that is the kanji for G, which is the last part of Fuji. This is huge. We have proof that someone whose name that ends with G found Faraway Island, and they're the ones who found Mew. They named Mew, which is stated in the journal entries. Now the month on the signpost ends with Burr, which would either be October, November, December, or September, forgot that one. But we do know that Mew was named on July the 10th based off the journal entry, and that means that they found Mew, they named it, they returned, and then, or they departed in the Burr month, and then they came back, they cloned Mewtwo, which we know that Mew gave birth on February the 6th, so that timeline kind of adds up perfectly. So, just to recap, all of the accomplishments that we just discussed for Mr. Fuji. He is in fact the owner of the Pokemon Mansion. He is the person who discovered Faraway Island, the person who discovered Mew on Faraway Island. He created the Pokemon Laboratory on Cinnabar Island, which of course results in the first instance of fossil restoration. And I didn't mention this yet, but he also technically, because he founded that lab, was directly involved with the discovery of Porygon and Porygon line, because we know that it was created in the Cinnabar lab based off the Stealth reports. He is the person who wrote the journal entries in the Pokemon Mansion, and he created Mewtwo. So Mr. Fuji has done so much for the Pokemon world, and it is baffling to me that we have not seen or heard of him from any point on beyond Generation 3. Like, the last time that we hear anything about him is in the Faraway Island event, and that was still years before, so I have a newfound respect for Mr. Fuji is all I can say. So this does leave a lot of unanswered questions though, because we don't really have a motive for why Mr. Fuji would have been creating Mewtwo or anything that he does, but I'm gonna believe that it was just because he was a man of science and that's what he wanted, what he decided to do with his life. But then it leads a lot of interesting questions. Was Team Rocket directly involved with his research? Who knows? But let me know if you want me to dive deeper into that, and I can try to find more evidence or disprove that theory. But anywho, if you guys did enjoy this, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all the fun stuff, and with that, I will see you in the next one.